Two human skulls rest on the dark ground as a snake slithers lazily through the hollow eye socket of one of them. A voice echoes through the stone corridors of a dungeon, announcing that a human sacrifice is on its way. A small, hooded goblin perks up with a scratch of its head, wondering what all the fuss is about. A pack of grinning, sharp-toothed goblins gathers around a towering masked figure, practically salivating at the mention of foolish adventurers walking into their lair. A massive stone and wood door stands sealed shut, with two goblin ears poking up curiously from the bottom as something rumbles on the other side. Two goblins press their ugly faces to a stone window, peering through with suspicious, beady eyes. A gloved hand extends forward, holding a rolled scroll adorned with a decorative charm. A figure in a plague doctor mask raises a palm as a tiny flame blooms above it, invoking the curse known as Poison Cloud. Thick, spreading gas floods the room where the goblins are clustered, seeping through every crack and window. Dozens of weapon-wielding goblins stand in a smoke-choked stone hall as a hissing poisonous cloud rolls through, defined as a level 3 curse with a 100-foot range and deadly staying power. 3 goblins begin to succumb. One collapses with its tongue hanging out, another clutches its chest in a coughing fit, and all of them scream that it is magic poison. Goblins drop and stagger near the door as the curse's devastating effects play out, killing or injuring anything level 2 and below, while the cloaked figure watches from the foreground, utterly unmoved. A gloved hand presses against the stone door and channels magic light into it, sealing it shut with a lock spell. 2 frantic goblins pound and hack at the door with an axe and bare hands. It will not budge. More goblins trapped behind a gate hammer desperately at the surface, urging each other to hurry before the gas claims them all. The cloaked figure stands in silence before the sealed gate, unhurried, with 2 small shapes barely visible in the far distance. The figure produces an hourglass from within its cloak. 3 minutes have passed exactly. A gloved hand closes its fingers around a handle, ready. The gate swings open to reveal a dark silhouette standing in the archway, surrounded by the motionless bodies of goblins strewn across the floor. The cloaked figure walks calmly through the carnage, bootsteps tapping against stone as goblins lie still all around. One goblin is still barely clinging to life, staring upward from the floor with gritted, defiant teeth. A black boot comes down beside the head of the fallen goblin, heavy, deliberate, and final. The figure looms over the scene in a red-lined cape, unhurried and utterly in control. One surviving goblin grips its staff and glares upward, spitting the word coward. A boot comes down hard on the goblin's head. The figure pulls back his hood to reveal the dark-haired face of a young man, his mask still on but his eyes cutting forward as he declares that this is the only way to avoid ending up the same as the goblins. A stone room opens before him, piled bodies on a stone slab to one side, women bound and pierced with arrows on the other, and in the background, a lone tied figure still alive. The pile of bodies tells a brutal, blood-soaked story without a single word. Several women hang restrained against pillars, arrows embedded in them, testament to the cruelty of this place. A wounded goblin crawls toward him, begging for its life and offering treasure and all the kidnapped women in exchange. The young man stares at the goblin, expression unreadable. His eyes go cold, and he tells it simply to shut up and die. The goblin's head is impaled by a volley of thin black projectiles before it can say another word. An elf woman with a bow and a blonde woman in white stare forward in wide-eyed, stunned silence. The young man stands with his back to the viewer as the 2 women face him from a doorway. He produces a set of keys, glances back over his shoulder, and tells them it is time to go. Their destination is just ahead. He walks away through the archway without breaking stride, and the 2 women follow. A prison gate swings open, the lock undone, and the silence of the dungeon hall gives way to possibility. Nearly a dozen women crowd behind the open cell door, clutching each other in disbelief and relief. The young man stands alone with his back to the room, facing the dark far corner of the stone hall. The women erupt in cheers, calling him their savior, while he simply walks away without acknowledging them. He passes within arm's reach of a blonde woman who watches him go, her expression unreadable as he keeps moving without a word. A hand flips through a binder of women's photographs, searching page after page with urgent purpose. The blonde woman and her companion watch the young man with concern, one of them quietly calling his name Yukido. Yukido stands with his fist clenched, jaw tight, muttering that the one he is looking for, Sana, is not here either. Outside the ruins, a single small figure stands alone in a clearing surrounded by towering trees. Yukido walks away into the forest while the freed women, their faces blurred and indistinct, watch him go. He stands with his back to the world, looking up as leaves drift around him in the wind. A breathtaking fantasy world unfolds, floating islands, towering rock formations, and birds gliding through an open sky. This is Everworld, a realm of sword and magic, and it is here, just hours before an ordinary high schooler is reincarnated, that the curtain rises. A computer screen flashes game clear, and Yukido, satisfied but already thinking ahead, notes that he has finished a full run with no magic restrictions. Before he can plan his next challenge, a girl bursts through his bedroom door with her arms wide open and a dramatic cry of his name. She launches herself onto his back in a full hug, declaring the game is so much fun, while Yukito stares ahead in wide-eyed surprise. She beams up at him, gushing that as expected, her big brother is the best. Yukito slumps over his desk in pure overwhelmed contentment as Sana trembles excitedly behind him, unable to contain herself over how unbearably cute he is. Sana's face flushes bright red with flustered embarrassment as Yukito catches her staring. Sana clasps her hands together nervously and admits she is actually hungry, shyly asking if he could make something for her. Yukito agrees immediately, privately marveling that even the sound of her stomach grumbling is adorable. Sana declares her dinner request with full enthusiasm: paella. The two sit at the dining table sharing a meal, Sana eating happily with hearts floating around her while Yukito watches with a gentle smile and reminds her not to overdo it. Sana teases him about his love of game restrictions, pointing out that he used to say the harder the challenge, the more interesting it gets. Yukito takes a cool sip and flatly corrects her, that is not the reason. Sana grins mischievously with her fork raised, letting slip that the real reason games are more interesting is because she is playing them with him. Yukito, flustered and utterly defeated, surrenders his slice of cake to her, and she lights up instantly. Yukito reflects warmly. He is Kirihara Yukito, 16 years old, and life is genuinely good when spent gaming with the cutest little sister in the world. His little sister Sana is 14 years old, honor student, athlete, and student council president, and she laughs with her whole heart. In a memory washed in white light, Sana kneels before a withdrawn Yukito sitting on the floor against a bookshelf, taking his hands and asking softly if she can play games with him too back when he could no longer bring himself to go to school. Yukito stares ahead in profile, dark circles under wide, unblinking eyes. Sana smiles gently with her eyes closed. She was the only one who ever accepted that part of him, no matter what. The table is cleared and Sana calls out a cheerful thanks for the meal, while Yukito steels himself with a quiet vow to protect her no matter what. Sana heads off to her room to study even on a holiday, and Yukito watches her go with an easy, fond remark. Sana's eyes go wide with joy at the mention of pancakes for her 3 o'clock snack, hearts appearing instantly despite the fact that it is still far too early. Sana leans in the doorway with a grin, requesting extra cream on her snack to replenish the HP she loses from studying. Yukito smiles and agrees, already planning the usual generous pile of fruit toppings. She asks what he will be doing in the meantime, playing of course, and he confirms it, with item restrictions next on the agenda. Sana beams with pure warmth while Yukito tilts his head in mild bewilderment. She calls from the hallway that she will join him once her studying is done, and he tells her he will be waiting. Sana pauses mid-step, her bare feet on the wooden floor, something unspoken catching in her throat. Sana turns to him radiant, and tells him how grateful she is to have Yukito as her big brother. No matter what happened to him at school, even the worst days with other boys, he carried it. No matter how he passed his time alone at home in front of a screen, she never judged. She always smiled for him, and he quietly reflects that he is just as grateful to have her. Sana throws her arms around him, laughing and telling her super cute big brother that she loves him, and he holds his most precious little sister close. The room dims without warning. The two turn to the glass door and find only pitch black outside, impossible, since it is supposed to be the middle of the afternoon. Yukito's face drains of color in an instant. A massive skeletal monster with horns and razor teeth presses its face against the glass, and Yukito shoves Sana behind him, screaming that it cannot be real, there is no way this is actually happening. Yukito grabs Sana and yanks her away from the door with desperate urgency. The monster's eye fixes on them through the glass, ancient, cold, and hungry. The glass door explodes inward as the monster's claw tears through it, sending shards flying while Yukito sprints and pulls Sana behind him. Sana's face is frozen in shock amid the cascade of broken glass. Yukito's hand locks around Sana's arm and pulls. He pulls her into his chest and turns to take whatever is coming, teeth set, eyes blazing. A single devastating slash tears across Yukito's back as he holds Sana, blood spraying as he takes the blow for her. Darkness, deeper darkness, nothing. A single devastating slash tears across Yukito's back as he holds Sana, blood spraying as he takes the blow for her. Yukito's small figure tumbles alone through an endless black void. He asks himself what happened. He realizes he cannot see anything, it is completely dark. A voice drifts through the void, addressing him by name and calling it unfortunate he died. Yukito demands to know who is speaking. Pale glowing orbs begin to emerge around him as the void slowly, quietly brightens. A 20-sided die and an ornate pedestal float in a starry expanse as the voice expresses pity for his short and unreasonable death, and offers him one more chance to be reborn into a new life. The monster's eyes flash in his memory just before Yukito jolts awake, or whatever passes for waking in this void, with a strangled scream. Yukito sits in the darkness, gasping, sweat on his face, with no idea where he is or what just happened. A woman seated on an ornate throne with a massive glowing die floating beside her tells Yukito, standing stunned in the foreground, that this place is called Everworld. The woman's lips curl into a smirk. Yukito stares at her, sweat beading on his face, barely able to process the word. A vision of 5 robed figures gathered beneath a glowing celestial light illustrates her words. This is a world full of magic and roaming beasts, where gods hold dominion over all things. The woman leans forward on her throne and introduces herself. She is Nephilia, the god of this world, which from Yukito's perspective would simply be called Another World. Yukito goes pale as the reality of his situation begins to fully land. Nephilia waits on her throne. He looks at her and mouths the word God. Yukito asks with visible relief if what she said is really true. Nephilia smiles calmly and confirms it. His sister is safe, then adds without missing a beat that he, on the other hand, is dead. Yukito cuts through everything to ask the only question that matters: what happened to Sana? Is his sister all right? Nephilia watches him steadily and repeats it plainly: he is dead. The weight of it crashes through Yukito all at once, and a ghostly image of himself seems to shudder apart beside him. Yukito looks down at his faintly glowing hands and exhales a broken laugh. So that is what happened. His knees give out and he crumbles to the floor in front of Nephilia's throne. He grips the front of his shirt over his chest, the ache of knowing he will never see Sana again hitting harder than the wound that killed him. Nephilia raises a hand and tells him that now that he understands, there is something important she needs to tell him. Still clutching his chest, Yukito finds a quiet, melancholy peace in the knowledge that he protected what mattered most. He did what a brother should do. A luminous book materializes in the air between Nephilia and Yukito. Its pages contain everything that exists in Everworld, from the highest mountain peaks to the ocean floor, from a sage's greatest wisdom to a fool's deepest desire. This is the World Book, and Yukito's own portrait stares back at him from its pages. Nephilia informs him that he has been reincarnated as an inhabitant of this world, and a stunned Yukito wonders if the figure in the book is truly himself. Yukito stares at the book and asks what a status even is. Nephilia extends her hand and explains that fate itself will determine his status as a new resident of the World Book. Yukito watches a 20-sided die spin in the air before him. Nephilia observes the spinning die with a calm, knowing smile. The die comes to a stop, landing on 17. Intelligence has been decided. A scribe points to the glowing World Book as Yukito looks on. The scribe writes furiously with a large quill, committing the result to record. The number 17 appears on the page as if by its own will. Nephilia gestures toward Yukito while another roll begins, telling him that his high intelligence from his past life has clearly carried over. She is impressed by how quickly he grasped the situation. Yukito stares at the document, piecing together that whatever the scribe writes manifests directly in the World Book. Nephilia begins announcing the final stat, endurance, then pauses, something catching her attention. A 13 appears on the page, ordinary, unremarkable. The die lands on 13, agility, decided. Nephilia waves off whatever gave her pause and declares his status complete, leaving Yukito to wonder what she almost said. Nephilia smiles, flips through a large book, and tells him he may choose one gift, whichever he likes, as a blessing from a god. A grand open book displays 4 legendary artifacts: a medicine that produces limitless omnipotent elixirs, a sword that has slain 5 demon lords, a staff that bestows the power of great mages to whoever holds it, and a dragon servant loyal enough to carry its master anywhere. Yukito studies the options with a measured expression, noting that the offerings are unexpectedly generous. A sword for protection is tempting, but so is everything else. He weighs the elixir, useful for both damage and healing, against the other choices. Nephilia assures him that every single item on the page is a genuinely powerful artifact. Yukito presses his thumb to his lip and thinks any one of them would be an advantage. His mind drifts to the image of himself as a caster. He always played that role, and the staff is the one that fits. Nephilia rises, the scribe begins recording, and Yukito announces his choice, the staff. A blinding surge of light erupts through the room as Nephilia rises into the air. The scribe throws his arms wide, and the force of the artifact's creation sends Yukito sprawling. Yukito gapes in pure stunned disbelief. Nephilia glows and floats as Yukito is knocked clean off his feet. Nephilia hovers with her arms extended forward, surrounded by light and rising bubbles. Yukito grimaces against the sensation. It feels like he is being pulled into the power itself. His eyes go wide with something between awe and terror. A grand ornate staff takes shape in the air as Nephilia and the scribe channel the creation, and Yukito kneels on the ground watching it form. This will take a while. They warn him to stay put. Yukito shifts where he kneels, uncertain, since she told him to wait, but the situation does not exactly feel like waiting. His eyes fall on the World Book resting open before him. A grand ornate staff takes shape in the air as Nephilia, and the scribe channel the creation, and Yukito kneels on the ground watching it form. This will take a while. They warn him to stay put. He stares down at the book's pages. The language is completely unreadable to him, and the realization creeps in that Sana may have actually been reincarnated into this world. Sana's face drifts up in his mind, translucent, smiling, and the thought of a world without her feels like the real death. He stands with his back to nothing, whispering her name. He wants to see her. He kneels over the open book in silence. Without warning, the book ignites with a brilliant light in his hands, and the pages begin flipping on their own. Yukito recoils and squints against the sudden blinding glare. The light fades to a quiet glow as the book settles. Yukito rubs his eye and touches the pages, bewildered by what just happened. He looks down, and what he sees on the open page stops him cold. Without warning, the book ignites with a brilliant light in his hands, and the pages begin flipping on their own. Yukito grabs Nephilia by the arm from behind, and she spins around, furious, demanding to know why he is not sitting still like she told him. The three of them stand apart as Yukito forces the confrontation. Nephilia looks down with a cool, calculating expression and knocks his hand away. Yukito shoves the open book directly into Nephilia's face, and she flinches back in shock. His teeth are bared, his expression burning. He demands to know what this means. Book falls open to page with a photo of a smiling girl with twin tails, and Yukito demands to know why Sana is written in the world book. Sana's photo stares up from the page, unmistakable. Nephilia stares at him, expression unreadable. Yukito holds the book out toward her, insisting with every inch of certainty he has that is Sana. He knows it. His face goes rigid, pupils shrinking to pinpoints as the implications hit him. Nephilia stands with arms crossed in the void, saying nothing. Yukito lays out the logic. She said everything about this world is written in the book, and that he needed his status set before he could become a resident. His own page in the book stares back as he makes his case, every field filled in, every stat confirmed. His hand grips the edge of Sana's page. If her profile is here, then that means something terrifying. Yukito's face twists with the full weight of the question. Did Sana die at the same moment he did, and has she already been reincarnated into this world? Nephilia reaches for the book and tells him plainly that a mere human has no business reading it. Hand it back. Yukito slams his fist down and roars at her to answer his question. His jaw is tight, his expression seething. The 20-sided die plummets from above and strikes the ground. The impact sends cracks spidering across the entire floor as the book tumbles from Yukito's grip. The floor shatters completely into floating rubble as the entire space begins to fall apart. Yukito slides across a tilting slab of rock, grunting as the ground pitches beneath him. The world book tumbles through the air amid the debris, and Yukito sees it. Every clue about Sana is inside that book. He launches himself into the air after it. Yukito dives through the collapsing void, arm outstretched, reaching for the falling book. Nephilia screams after him, "Stop, wait, that book." The book spins alone in the center of a shattering world as Nephilia's voice tears through the void. "Do not touch her precious world book." Yukito falls freely through the void, clutching the world book tight against his chest, and roars that if this is reincarnation, then bring it on. His expression is set, resolved. He will do whatever it takes to survive. The book's cover holds her name in his thoughts, Sana. Yukito plunges through a starry void with the book in one hand and his fist clenched at his side, and below him Sana's face blooms large and luminous in the darkness. He swears, with everything he has left, that he will find. A small memory surfaces of Yukito and his sister Sana sharing a warm embrace, while Yukito himself stares ahead, the weight of that recollection plain on his face. Sana beams with an effortless, radiant smile, her hand raised near her cheek as if joy itself cannot be contained. A colossal skeletal monster towers over a tiny girl standing alone before it, and in that single, terrible moment, the peaceful life Yukito knew was forever destroyed. Horned, winged goddess named Nephilia lounges on her throne, surrounded by floating dice and trinkets, looking every bit the eccentric divine being responsible for sending Yukito into a world called Everworld. Yukito's eyes go wide and sweat beads on his forehead, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and barely contained panic. Framed like a cherished photograph, Sana smiles warmly, the revelation that she too was reincarnated into this world, landing somewhere between relief and dread. When Yukito pressed Nephilia for answers and she played dumb, the very space around them began to shatter, sending him tumbling helplessly into an abyss of darkness. Yukito plummets through a void of shattered glass, clutching the world book to his chest, the only lead he has on finding Sana. His fingers grip the edge of the book with quiet, desperate determination, a wordless promise to his sister. Blinding flash of light erupts around Yukito as he continues his freefall, the sudden brightness shocking him mid-descent. Yukito grits his teeth and sweats through the terror of freefall, still clutching the book as though letting go is simply not an option. Yukito hurtles face first toward a vast forested landscape far below, still locked in a white-knuckled grip on the World Book as the ground rushes up to meet him, and this is introduced as the second chapter of Another World Munchkin. Yukito snaps awake mid-freefall, his face a mask of pure, wide-eyed horror as the reality of his situation hits him all at once. He screams the whole way down, arms and legs flailing as the ground refuses to wait any longer. He crashes straight through the forest canopy in a spectacular, undignified tangle of branches and leaves. Yukito ends up flat on his back in the underbrush, dazed and breathless, clutching the book and very relieved to still be alive. Yukito hauls himself out of a hollow tree trunk and stumbles into a sunlit meadow, scuffed but standing. He takes in his surroundings with a cautious glance, dirt-smudged and disheveled, finding nothing more alarming than trees and open grass. A peaceful path winds through the trees toward a bright horizon deceptively ordinary for what is supposed to be another world. The mundane scenery gives Yukito pause, and then the truth sinks in: he is genuinely, actually standing in another world. Any remaining doubt evaporates when Yukito looks up and finds not one but 3 massive, glowing moons hanging in the sky above the tree line. The weight of it all settles on Yukito as he stands in the meadow staring down at the book. He has truly been reincarnated. The thought of Sana jolts him back to urgency, and he immediately turns to the one clue he has. The World Book falls open on its own, and there on the page is Sana's profile, her face looking back at him from within its pages. A closer look at her entry confirms it, a character sheet bearing Sana's smiling portrait. Yukito exhales, scrubbing the tension from his brow. It is an unmistakable match. All doubt is gone. Sana is out there somewhere in this world, and Yukito's jaw sets with the fierce resolve to find her. The book reveals Sana's location as capital city Reinhardt, and Yukito seizes on it. If he can get there, he might actually see her again. Something else on the page catches Yukito off guard, pulling him up short. He realizes the foreign text is reading itself to him in Japanese, a small mercy he is very willing to accept without questioning. Curious, Yukito turns to the next page, wondering what else the book has to show him. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. A complete character sheet for Kirihara Sana lays out her identity in full, a level 1 cleric of lawful good alignment, stationed in capital city Reinhardt, with notably strong wisdom and charisma scores and a respectable 10 hit points to her name. Yukito's own character sheet stares back at him, a level 1 wizard of neutral alignment, currently stranded on the Mana plane, with decent intelligence but a constitution so low it borders on cruel, and a maximum hit point total of exactly 1. Yukito's own character sheet stares back at him, a level 1 wizard of neutral alignment, currently stranded on the Mana plane, with decent intelligence but a constitution so low it borders on cruel, and a maximum hit point total of exactly 1. Yukito's own character sheet stares back at him, a level 1 wizard of neutral alignment, currently stranded on the Mana plane, with decent intelligence but a constitution so low it borders on cruel, and a maximum hit point total of exactly 1. Yukito's own character sheet stares back at him, a level 1 wizard of neutral alignment, currently stranded on the Mana plane, with decent intelligence but a constitution so low it borders on cruel, and a maximum hit point total of exactly 1. Yukido's own character sheet stares back at him, a level 1 wizard of neutral alignment, currently stranded on the Mana plane, with decent intelligence but a constitution so low it borders on cruel, and a maximum hit point total of exactly 1. Yukido's own character sheet stares back at him, a level 1 wizard of neutral alignment, currently stranded on the Mana plane, with decent intelligence but a constitution so low it borders on cruel, and a maximum hit point total of exactly 1. Yukido studies his own page in the book with a look of grim neutrality. At least now he knows what he is working with. Then the hit point total registers, and Yukido absolutely loses it, 1 HP, a single point standing between him and death, and he starts shouting about recovery before he even finishes the sentence. Yukido works through the math with grim focus. A 2-story fall does 1 to 10 points of damage at random, and with only 1 HP to his name, the forest he just crashed through nearly killed him several times over. As Yukido turns toward the tree line, something in the bushes rustles ominously, and he realizes his luck may already be running thin. The only comfort Yukido can scrape together is that Sana, at least, got a better deal than he did. Yukido examines his class details in Sana's, a wizard and a cleric respectively, and begins the deeply uncertain task of figuring out what he can actually do. The sheer volume of information overwhelms him and he grabs his own hair, grinding his teeth at the impossible density of it all. He steadies himself and focuses back on the class section, determined to parse it. The book's ornate cover offers no answers on its own. Yukido stands in the clearing and confronts an uncomfortable truth. Knowing where Sana is and knowing how to reach her are very different problems. Blundering through the forest without a plan is dangerous, but the thought of spending a night in it is somehow worse. And then, with crushing inevitability, the HP situation reasserts itself and Yukido slumps under the weight of it. Yukido pulls himself back together with the iron logic of a lifelong gamer. Before anything else, gather information. It will take time, but the World Book is the only map he has, and he intends to read every word of it. He holds the book open and commits. Survival and reunion both have the same answer, and it is somewhere inside these pages. Yukido sets off into the dense forest, a small, determined figure swallowed by towering trees. The book confirms there is a road nearby, and Yukido adjusts his route accordingly. He pauses beside a tree heavy with large fruit, book open, cross-referencing what he is looking at. The World Book proves its worth immediately. It falls open on its own to exactly the page he needs, without him having to ask twice. The relevant entry confirms the fruit is safe to eat, complete with an illustrated diagram. Yukido takes a bite and his eyebrows shoot up. It is genuinely good. Apple on the outside, orange on the inside, another world, another fruit, apparently. Yukido harvests some herbs the book identified as useful and tucks them away. A cluster of small white rabbits appears nearby, each one sporting a single horn on its forehead. The forest's fauna is already proving stranger than expected. One of the horned rabbits wanders directly up to Yukido, and he freezes, caught completely off guard. The book identifies them as snow rabbits, nocturnal, timid, and so endearing to both humans and demi-humans that they are commonly kept as pets. Yukido looks down at the little creature by his feet with quiet relief. Having a book that can instantly distinguish dangerous from harmless might be the single greatest advantage he has in this world. Yukido reaches toward one of the snow rabbits, already imagining how delighted Sana would be to see the adorable little thing. The snow rabbit bears a mouthful of very sharp teeth and lunges. It turns out the bite attack listed in its stat block is not theoretical. Yukido sprints away in full panic from a trio of furious horned rabbits, screaming internally that a single bite from any of them would kill him outright. He makes it to a tree and leans against it, drenched in sweat and breathing hard, his thoughts drifting to Sana and whether she is just as frightened out there somewhere. 2 moons hang in the darkening sky above the silent tree line, indifferent and enormous. Yukido talks himself into cautious hope. Sana has always been sharp, even as a young child, and she would know how to handle herself. Under the twin moons, Yukido's silhouette crests a hill alone, wondering if Sana even knows yet what kind of world she has woken up in. No matter how thoroughly Yukido searches the book, Sana's entry remains frustratingly sparse, 1 page and nothing more. The book is generous with general knowledge but cagey about individuals, and Yukido suspects he has not yet figured out how to unlock its full potential. The more immediate problem, how far his own 2 feet can actually carry him, gnaws at him as he walks. His mind wanders to Sana in the capital city as he makes his way deeper into the forest. Without any warning, goblins materialize from the trees on all sides, surrounding Yukido completely before he can react. A mob of grinning, armed goblins closes in, their expressions somewhere between gleeful and hungry. Yukido startles at the sight of them, and then startles again when they open their mouths and identify him out loud. The fact that they can speak throws Yukido completely. He did not expect monsters to hold a conversation. The goblins cluster around Yukito, asking in small, seemingly innocent voices whether he is hurt, and against his better instincts, he starts to wonder if they might actually mean well. One of the goblins pats Yukito's leg reassuringly, repeating that everything is fine now, and Yukito stands there, deeply unsure how to feel about being comforted by a monster. Yukito stares straight ahead with wide, sweating eyes, cautiously wondering if these creatures might actually be willing to help him, even as alarm bells ring somewhere in the back of his head. The goblin turns to face him with the widest, toothiest, most unsettling grin imaginable. The goblins shove Yukito to the ground all at once, and the world book goes flying out of his hands. The goblins stand over their fallen prey and roar with laughter, delighted with themselves. Yukito snarls up at them through gritted teeth, furious and humiliated, the realization setting in that the kindness was a setup from the very beginning. The world book lies open on the grass nearby, pages exposed. The book falls open to its goblin entry, and what it reveals is not reassuring small humanoids of neutral evil alignment who travel in packs specifically because they are too weak to cause harm alone. The entry makes their nature perfectly clear. Goblins derive genuine pleasure from cruelty, and have a long history of enslaving humans and dwarves for sport, while the creatures surrounding Yukito make their intentions loudly and enthusiastically known. The entry makes their nature perfectly clear. Goblins derive genuine pleasure from cruelty, and have a long history of enslaving humans and dwarves for sport, while the creatures surrounding Yukito make their intentions loudly and enthusiastically known. The goblins argue among themselves over whether to kill Yukito immediately or drag out his suffering. The debate is lively, and they are clearly enjoying it. Flat on the ground and staring up at them, Yukito thinks, with raw, furious disbelief, that he absolutely refuses to die this soon after being reincarnated. Sana's smiling face surfaces in his mind, warm, familiar, a reason to survive. A goblin hoists its cleaver above its head and brings it down, and Yukito screams his sister's name into the dark. The goblins freeze mid-action and snap their attention toward something approaching through the trees. A lone armored figure walks calmly down the forest path toward the clearing, unhurried and unmistakably purposeful. Yukito looks up from the ground as armored boots stop directly in front of him, and a voice cuts through the chaos with a clear declaration: protecting the weak and destroying evil is simply what she does. Two goblins bristle at the interruption, one snarling as they demand to know who dares enter the situation uninvited. The goblins freeze mid-action and snap their attention toward something approaching through the trees. A woman in gleaming white and gold armor stands tall with long blonde hair loose around her shoulders, announcing herself as Charlotte R. Brownia, third daughter of Duke Brownia, and a paladin who will not tolerate violence in her family's territory. The goblins scatter immediately at the word paladin, chattering in alarm as they flee and leaving Yukito still on the ground beside the fallen book. Yukito lies there blinking up at her, the word paladin echoing in his head, not quite able to process what just happened. Charlotte crouches down, returns the world book to him with a calm smile, and asks if he is injured. The female knight stands her ground, sword in hand, sweat pouring down her face as she tells the male character to run while he stares at her in bewilderment. The knight's face is a picture of barely contained exhaustion, breath ragged and skin glistening. The male character notices the sweat and freezes, a single drop forming on his brow. The knight launches herself at the nearest goblin with reckless abandon, holy sword raised and battle cry on her lips. She swings wildly at two goblins who duck and sway with contemptuous ease, completely unfazed by her assault. The knight spins herself into a dizzy spiral, multiple ghosted images of her flailing form streaking through the air before she loses all sense of direction. The male character watches the disaster unfold with a flat, sweat-drenched expression, a shadow creeping over his eyes. The knight trembles violently, barely managing to keep both hands on the sword as she strains just to hold it upright. The sword tip rings against the ground with a sharp, decisive sound. Her knees give out and she crumples forward, leaning on the blade just to keep from collapsing entirely. Pulling back reveals the full catastrophe, the heaving knight surrounded on all sides by a massive ring of goblins, while the male character sits helplessly in the distance. Tears and sweat streak the knight's face as she trembles and admits the sword is far too heavy for her to wield. The male character's jaw drops as he stares at an open page in the book, something clearly wrong with what he is reading. The stat card lays bare the humiliating truth, a strength score of 7 with a -2 penalty, weaker than the man holding the book. The male character erupts in furious disbelief, sweating as he realizes that behind all her dramatic entrance, this knight is absolutely hopeless with a sword. The knight hits the ground, covering her head as the goblins come crashing down on her. Goblins hammer the knight from behind with mace and spear, while she curls inward and endures. The male character shoots his hand out toward the chaos, demanding it stop. Blow after blow rains down on the knight, but a description of her armor explains why she is still standing. a sacred breastplate handed down through her family, offering extraordinary protection at the cost of immense physical burden for anyone without the strength to carry it. The male character stares at the book in sweating panic, fully aware that if he does nothing, this girl is going to break. In the background, goblins continue their assault while the male character watches from the side, frozen in silence. His fist clenches against the grass as he runs the brutal math in his head: no weapons, one hit point, and a clear path to escape exactly as the knight told him. 3 goblins leer in his direction, grinning with the promise of what they would do to him if he were caught. His mind flashes to the image of himself lying dead in a pool of blood. His hands clutch at his own shirt as something inside him tightens. His eye goes wide, heart slamming against his ribs. He stares downward, face shadowed, breathing hard and ragged. His head snaps up suddenly. Something has changed. He stares at a character profile page in the book, his gaze going still. 2 images of the knight surface, one smiling warmly, one fierce with determination, as he thinks about finding someone named Sana quickly. A decision settles across the male character's face, half of it swallowed in shadow. A goblin hurls itself through the air toward him with a massive cleaver, screaming for his death. The male character bolts at full speed, and the goblins left behind can only watch him go. His teeth are gritted and his face is drenched in sweat, but there is conviction behind his eyes. Survival demands this. The goblins erupt in mocking laughter as the male character vanishes into the dark mouth of the forest, calling him weak and stupid as he disappears. 2 goblins pin the knight to the ground and begin to discuss what to do with her. A pair of goblins drool with cruel anticipation, calling for her to be made a slave. The knight's eyes blow wide with terror, her face soaked in sweat as one of the goblins praises her armor. A goblin clamps its hand around her leg and she cries out, wrenching herself away in desperation. A goblin's head jerks toward a sound, a rhythmic clopping approaching from somewhere nearby. The male character comes crashing in on the back of a massive white horse, the beast surging forward with tremendous speed. He pulls the horse up short and turns to the fallen knight behind him, demanding she get to her feet immediately. He spins back toward her with an incredulous shout. Why did she come back with this horse? The female character stares up at him, struck completely speechless. He shouts with everything he has, sweating, breathless, admitting he wanted to run but couldn't just leave her. The female character stares at him in stunned, wordless shock. A goblin bearing a massive blade lunges toward them as the characters scramble in the open field. The horse lashes out with its hind legs as a goblin rushes in with a weapon. The white horse rears up and drives its hooves down onto a goblin with crushing force, then swings its glowing white eyes forward with terrifying calm. The white horse rears up and drives its hooves down onto a goblin with crushing force, then swings its glowing white eyes forward with terrifying calm. The male character gapes at what he is witnessing. The white horse rears to its full height and lets out a deafening neigh, sending the surrounding goblins scrambling to the ground. A piercing sound tears through the air, sending both the male and female characters clutching their ears, and the goblins below them doing the same. The horse launches itself into the air above the crumbling mob of goblins. The horse tears through the goblin horde in a relentless blur of hooves and speed, scattering them like ragdolls. One goblin holds its blade and grins, screaming at the others to kill the horse fast. The horse's hoof catches that very goblin square in the chest and sends it flying. Goblins explode outward in every direction from a central impact. One goblin breaks completely, bolting away in blind terror. The rest of the horde follows, fleeing in a panicked rout. Another goblin takes a direct hit. The field falls quiet, scattered with the broken bodies and abandoned weapons of the defeated goblins. The white horse rears triumphantly, radiant and powerful. Its eyes glow with an otherworldly white light. The horse sprints after the last fleeing goblins, its legs ablur as the terrified creatures scatter screaming before it. The male character watches from a distance as the horse blazes under the light, utterly awestruck. The male character flips through the book, searching for answers. Memories of the female character stumbling through battle, outmatched, exhausted, and dangerously under-equipped, flash through his mind as he wonders why she came at all. Something in the book surprises him. The equipment page lists a holy armor, a holy grand saint sword, and a war horse, and listed among her gear, the horse has an official designation. Standing beside the horse after the battle, the male character pieces it together. This horse normally answers only to its owner, but it reacted powerfully the moment it heard the name Charlotte. Charlotte stands at the campfire and introduces herself properly, 3rd daughter of Duke Brownian and a holy knight. She beams, hugging the horse's head and thanking both Yukito and Rocinante for saving her. She smiles and pulls the horse close, gratitude radiating off her. Charlotte deflates with embarrassment at the sorry display she put on earlier while Yukito holds his book nearby. Yukito waves it off and credits Rocinante just as much. He smiles and reaches out a hand to pet the horse. Rocinante tosses her head away sharply, refusing his touch. Charlotte wraps her arms around the horse apologetically. Rocinante has only ever warmed up to her, having been together since the horse was young. Yukido observes that the two of them are clearly inseparable. Yukido flips through his book with a faint smile, then receives an enthusiastic correction from Charlotte. Rocinante is her absolute favorite. Charlotte leans against Rocinante while status windows float in the air. Rocinante sits at level 3 with a strength of 20 and a +5 bonus, while Charlotte is level 1 with a strength of 7 and a -2 penalty, and Yukido cannot believe what he is reading. He runs the numbers in his head and realizes Rocinante towers over Charlotte in nearly every stat, except judgment and charm. Charlotte pours tea with quiet dignity and states plainly that she loses to a horse. Yukido cradles the warm mug she hands him and moves to ask who she actually is. Yukido explains that whatever language barrier existed before seems to have dissolved, and introduces himself as Kirihara Yukido. Charlotte repeats his name slowly, tasting the unfamiliar syllables. Yukido twitches at the comment about his strange name. Charlotte leans in so close to his face that Yukido practically launches himself backward. She finds his appearance unusual and demands to know where he comes from, while he stammers something vague, and she accepts it without suspicion. Seen from a distance at their small campsite, Charlotte mentions that the surrounding area is dangerous, and even the highway requires caution when traveling alone. Yukido stares down at nothing in particular, trembling, wondering whether he stands any real chance of finding Sana in a world this brutal. He sits with his mug and the book, quietly and grimly working through the reality. He is too weak to fight. One more monster encounter could kill him, and without help he will never reach Sana. Charlotte's stat screen stares back at him from the open book. Yukido wrestles with himself, telling himself not to use her. She is his benefactor. His face crumples under the weight of the choice, sweat dripping as he holds his own head. His jaw locks tight. He has no other option. He reaches toward Charlotte and calls her name, telling her he has a request. Yukido drops to his knees before Charlotte and asks her to help him find his sister Sana. Charlotte blinks at him in surprise. He grips his book with white knuckles and admits he has no money, no weapons, nothing to offer, only this book. He explains that a monster attack separated him from his sister, that he is hopelessly far from home, and that he has no idea what to do next. He's sweating and wide-eyed as he admits the plain truth. He cannot do this alone. He presses his forehead fully to the ground in front of Charlotte and begs her with everything he has. Charlotte looks down at him with a soft, concerned expression, his name on her lips. Still prostrate on the ground, Yukido hears Charlotte rise to her feet. She tells him she will help. Yukido looks up, disbelieving. Charlotte leans forward with a radiant smile and extends her hand, declaring it the duty of a holy knight to aid those who need it. Yukido takes her hand and shakes it, smiling with genuine relief, calling her his benefactor. He tells her his sister was last thought to be somewhere near the capital, though the details are unclear, and Charlotte takes this in stride. Charlotte leads Rocinante forward and urges them to move. The capital is a long way off. She names their first destination, the town of Orpeda. Yukido glances back at her with a shadowed expression and agrees. Yukido watches Charlotte prepare the horse, quietly satisfied that things went as the book suggested they would. He runs through her qualities in his head, genuinely kind and good-hearted, devoted to a god of justice and love, and precisely the sort of person whose trust is easy to gain and whose suspicion is nearly impossible to trigger. He concludes that she is exactly what he needs right now, even if he cannot rely on her strength alone. Yukido holds his book and accepts the situation grimly. The book and this girl are all he has, and he cannot afford to think beyond that. A shadow settles over his eyes. He looks back at Charlotte standing with the horse. Charlotte turns to him with a bright, warm smile and tells him to do his best. God will surely see them through. He tells himself this cannot be helped. He has to save Sana. Yukido stares forward with tired, gritted determination. He has no choice but to lean on this holy knight and her absurdly powerful horse, and with that settled, he tells Charlotte he is in her debt and looks forward to the road ahead. Under a full moon, the male character walks through a dense forest path alongside a female character mounted on a white horse. The male character flips through an open book, reflecting on everything he has learned since arriving in this strange new world. He recalls his discoveries, reading, studying status screens, and absorbing the fundamental laws of this world through its mysterious tome. A handheld world book displays a female character's profile and data, though the male character wonders about a girl named Sana and notes that some information remains hidden no matter how much he studies. The male character walks the forest path with his book open while behind him, a female knight in full armor strides beside their white warhorse, Rocinante. He pauses in thought, weighing the second rule of this world: magic is rationed, each spell level capped at a handful of uses per day, reset only by sleep. Something stirs in the underbrush, rustling from within the shadows of the trees. The group halts as something bursts into the open, an exclamation point hanging in the air like a warning bell. The male character's face drops into sheer disbelief. Goblins, again, as if this entire forest belongs to them. Three goblins charge forward snarling, two surging behind their leader with reckless, scrambling speed. Rocinante, the warhorse, answers with a devastating kick, sending a goblin airborne while the female knight holds her position. The male character watches in wide-eyed silence as the sound of repeated impacts fills the air around him. From a distance, the female knight sits composed on her horse amid a field of downed goblins, an effortless display of overwhelming power. One goblin had been lurking unseen in the bushes with a bow drawn, waiting for its moment, while the male character stood exposed on the path. The male character's expression shifts from alarm to resolve. This is the moment to put everything he has studied to the test. He raises his right hand upward in a slow, deliberate motion. Light and energy erupt from the ground around him as the female knight watches from horseback, the air crackling with the beginning of something powerful. The goblin reels, clutching its head in stunned pain. The female knight reacts with surprise, bracing herself against whatever is unfolding. The male character moves his hands with precision as light particles gather around him, inwardly recounting that casting a spell demands a perfectly memorized incantation. Every gesture must be exact and every word focused. A single error collapses the spell entirely. With teeth clenched and eyes locked forward, he breathes through the final moment of concentration and calls forth blue light. He locks into a powerful stance, arms crossed and glowing energy rising at his feet as he commands the spell to take the shape of an arrow. His hand thrusts forward, and a circular magic seal blazes into existence at his palm with a sharp rush of force. He directs the spell to strike its target. He shouts, pouring every ounce of will into the release. A magic bolt, a first-level spell requiring voice, gesture, and a small laughing rock, blasts from his outstretched hand and seal in a blazing surge of light, capable of traveling up to 80 feet and dealing unavoidable damage without needing to confirm whether it struck. The blonde female character grabs Yukito by the shoulders with wide, astonished eyes, barely able to contain her amazement that he is a real wizard. Yukito breaks into a wide, sweaty grin. He did it. He actually used magic. A dark creature smolders nearby while a notice board flickers, finishing off enemies. It turns out, earns experience points. Several small coin pouches lie scattered across the rocky ground. The goblins left something behind. Yukito collects them with a small, practical smile. It might come in useful. Yukito kneels on the ground with his hands pressed together in a solemn, prayer-like gesture over a small object, while the blonde female character watches silently behind him. A hand holds a small, textured coin pouch, and Yukito quietly wonders what exactly he has become. He grits his teeth and clenches his fist, steeling himself with one unwavering truth. All of this is for survival, and for finding Sana. Yukito and the blonde female character travel through a forested landscape, she riding the horse and he walking beside it beneath tall trees. The two move forward across an open grassy field, the horizon stretching wide ahead of them. The blonde female character raises a hand to her forehead and spots something in the distance, her voice lifting with excitement. Yukito shields his eyes and looks ahead, his expression shifting into awe at what lies before them. Rising beyond a stone bridge over water stands the fortress city of Orbita, massive, walled, and towered, the largest city in the region and a world apart from any capital. The fortress towers loom against the sky, ancient and unyielding. Yukito and the blonde female character approach the massive closed gate with the horse, two armed guards standing watch before it. One of the guards fixes them with an intensely intimidating stare. Yukito's eyes go wide as the guards close in, the sheer scale of everything around him hitting all at once. The blonde female character reaches out to present something to the spear-bearing guard, fumbling slightly as she searches for it. A gloved hand holds out a metallic crest bearing two horses and a shield, and the question hangs in the air whether this will be enough. Both guards freeze in shock, eyes blown wide, barely able to believe what they are looking at. The guards snap into a deep salute, falling over themselves to apologize upon recognizing the Brownian family crest. The blonde female character walks forward through the bowing guards, while Yukito follows close behind as they are escorted to the station barracks. Yukito trails behind in stunned silence, the realization settling over him. She is no ordinary companion, she is a noble. Yukito stands alone in a courtyard inspecting his newly acquired dark cloak and clothing, satisfied that blending in is far safer than standing out. He glances aside, his thoughts drifting to Charlotte. She had told him to change and wait, but he finds himself wondering what she is up to now. A heavy door groans open somewhere nearby, and Yukito snaps to attention. Yukito stands in his full new outfit, dark cloak, light tunic and buckled boots, gazing outward, changed and ready. A lively city street spreads out before him, European-style timber-framed buildings surrounding a central fountain where townspeople bustle in all directions. Yukito takes in the fantasy town around him with a wide-eyed, delighted smile, completely captivated by what he sees. His head swivels back and forth, drinking in every detail of the unfamiliar streets. He breaks into a run across the cobblestone streets, his cloak billowing behind him. His boot strikes the cobblestone with a firm step as he moves deeper into the city. Shops unlike anything from his world line the streets beneath timber-framed buildings hung with unfamiliar signs. People of all kinds, horned, pointed-eared, and otherwise, move through the streets in a living tapestry of fantasy races. Sprinting through the winding streets, Yukido is struck by how completely this world differs from everything he has ever known. Yukido flips through his book with a wistful smile, wishing he could share all of this with Sana. An eye goes wide in sudden alarm. Yukido stops dead in his tracks, silhouetted against the street as the shock of what he has just found roots him to the spot. He stares at the world book with a stricken expression. Sana's location information is gone, and he cannot tell if it is a bug or something far worse. Yukido sweats over the book, a strangled noise of panic escaping him as his mind scrambles for answers. He frantically flips through page after page until the book falls open to a detailed map of the surrounding region: Orbita City, Kurogiri Mountains, the Elf Forest, Ida Village, and routes to the capital and Port Turen all marked across its surface. He stares at the map, his racing thoughts landing on one conclusion: this is most likely a map of the area. A diamond-shaped icon sits beside a drawing of a castle on the map, and Yukido has no idea what it means. His hands grip the book tightly as a realization strikes him. The page opened on its own when he thought of Sana. Yukido stares at the diamond icon, a ghostly image of a girl with long hair hovering at the edge of his thoughts as he desperately wonders if that icon marks where Sana is. He startles at the sound of footsteps approaching and Charlotte's voice calling out to him. Yukido turns back with a composed expression. Charlotte has arrived, and whatever comes next will have to wait. The blonde girl steps out in a striking black and white ruffled corset dress, announcing her change of clothes with a satisfied smile. Yukido's jaw drops and his face flushes crimson, utterly blindsided by how cute she looks. She walks ahead, calling his name, while he snaps back to attention and hurries along. Yukido flinches visibly, still recovering from the shock. Two figures chat in the background while Yukido glances over his shoulder. He mentions that Rocinante and the armor are being looked after at a friend of his father's barracks, and urges them to get moving. Yukido steals a peek through a narrow gap, eyes darting with quiet curiosity. Yukido silently appraises the blonde girl, concluding that at 17 she is as charming as expected, and that aside from Sana, no girl at his school comes close. They walk through a European-style cobblestone street lined with timber-framed houses, and Yukido wonders aloud whether the map holds any clues to Sana's whereabouts. The two stroll side by side down the cobblestones as Yukido asks why a young noble lady like her was wandering alone in that forest. She confirms that yes, she is a noble lady, and turns the question back on him with a curious tilt of her voice. The blonde girl glances to the side with a quiet, thoughtful smile, taking a moment before she answers. She paints a picture of her grandfather, a legendary knight known as the Dragon Slayer, praised by the Lord of the Land for his dragon-killing prowess. Eyes closed and hands clasped, she speaks of the splendid will she inherited from him and her dream of becoming a holy knight who protects the weak, the reason she set out to forge herself in combat. She beams that meeting Yukido must also be part of God Runia's grand plan, while Yukido flips through his book with a nervous sweat drop, noting that her ambition is admirable if nothing else. Yukido eyes the blonde girl and quietly notes to himself that her dexterity stat is completely wasted under all that heavy armor, stifling a small laugh. Off to the side, someone asks whether she brought her sword, and she confirms that she did. She holds the enormous blade across her body with both hands, declaring that the Grand Saint's sword, the sacred family heirloom of the Bornean bloodline that once slew a dragon, will never leave her side. Yukido glances down at his book, grimacing internally. His data confirms it is merely an ordinary magical long sword +2, and that her physical strength is far too low to wield it properly. She pushes open a door and bright light spills out as she announces their arrival, while Yukido reacts with wide-eyed surprise. They step into the Adventurers Guild, a bustling tavern-like hall packed with humans, elves, dwarves, and all manner of races, every one of them a registered adventurer of the castle town. A human in a bandana and an elf with a goatee huddle together over a scroll, deep in their own conversation. A female elf with a pipe stands at ease behind a seated male adventurer in white armor who nurses his drink without a care in the world. A dark hooded figure looms over a crystal ball, while a woman in an ornate headpiece watches with quiet attention. Yukido's eyes go wide as he takes in the sheer variety of races around him, an elf, a dwarf, staring openly in fascination. The two main characters stand in the guild doorway sizing up the room, and Yukido lays out his reasoning. The guild is the fastest path to information about Sana and their way home, and if they build a reputation as adventurers, Sana might find them first. Yukido steps up to the reception counter, where a dark-haired woman asks how she can help. The receptionist smiles with warm amusement, remarking that some rather cute customers have walked through the door. Yukito fumbles forward to explain that they want to become adventurers, while the blonde girl waits behind him. The receptionist bursts into laughter, utterly delighted and openly incredulous at the idea of the two of them wanting to be adventurers. Yukito whips around in surprise, caught completely off guard by the reaction. The entire guild hall erupts, adventurers of every stripe howl with laughter, mocking the two as weak brats who have no business even setting foot in a place like this. Yukito stands there red-faced and sweating, genuinely baffled as to what he said wrong. He wonders aloud, to no one in particular, whether he said something strange. Adventurers scattered around the hall keep on laughing, showing no sign of letting up. Yukito jolts in shock as something hits and a startled cry cuts through the noise. The blonde girl, Charlotte, erupts in outrage, demanding to know what just happened and calling out the sheer rudeness of it all. Yukito looks back at Charlotte, who is still standing her ground inside the guild. A massive bearded man laughs into his mug and slurs that there is nothing wrong with lightening the mood, then sneers that showing up dressed like that must mean they are looking for a playmate. Charlotte's hand flies to her sword and she begins to draw it, furious at the insinuation. Charlotte sprawls face down on the wooden floor with a crash, while the dark-haired receptionist gasps and Yukito stands frozen in wide-mouthed horror. The guild hall roars with laughter as Yukito stands in the middle of the chaos, the blonde girl collapsed in the foreground and a small bearded figure cackling in the back. Charlotte winces on the floor, teeth bared and one eye shut tight as the blow registers. The bearded man tilts a barrel to his mouth, sword hilt visible in the frame, swaggering without a hint of remorse. A barrel is being refilled with liquid as raucous laughter continues to shake the hall. Charlotte seethes with barely contained fury, while Yukito hovers behind her in a panic, urging her to calm down and silently noting to himself just how fast she is to pick a fight. An arm is yanked aside with a rough pull. The massive bearded man scoops Charlotte up against him with a booming laugh, demanding she be his drinking partner, while she pushes back with everything she has and screams at him to let her go. Yukito plants himself and shouts for the man to release her. The bearded man keeps Charlotte pinned as food flies through the air, and Yukito lunges forward in desperation. Calling out Charlotte's name, she cries back for Yukito. A hand with long nails presses softly against a surface, barely a sound. A tall blonde woman in a black dress materializes behind Yukito and rests a hand on his shoulder. Asking if he is all right, he stammers an awkward apology, cheeks burning red. Someone explains in passing that the dwarf always causes trouble when he gets into the alcohol, and the man himself laughs it off without shame. The blonde woman pulls Yukito's flustered face against her chest while his status is quietly noted. She is an ordinary human of a particular profession, with a significant bonus in social skills. She steers the dazed and dizzy Yukito toward a quieter corner, offering him all sorts of services given how cute she finds him. Yukito insists he is fine even as he tumbles downward in a bewildered spiral. A foot slips and something snaps underfoot. Yukito lands hard on the floor, completely stunned. Charlotte stands fuming and panting, sweat pouring down her face, looking ready to combust. A crowd of adventurers laughs and jeers at the pair sitting on the floor, openly questioning whether they are really sure they want to be adventurers. Yukito sits on the floor staring downward, red-faced and sweating as the laughter continues to rain down on him. Voices from all sides tell them to leave and make clear they are not welcome, but Yukito's inner voice pushes back, reminding him he came here to find Sana and that he cannot walk away like this. Charlotte stands fuming and panting, sweat pouring down her face, looking ready to combust. Yukito surges to his feet and shouts across the entire guild hall, asking, begging, if anyone is willing to form a party with them. An elf and a bald man both look up in stunned disbelief. The bearded man at the table leans in with barely restrained aggression, snarling that adventurers put their lives on the line and demanding to know who in their right mind would team up with two kids like them. Yukito's face fills with sweat and desperation as he shouts that his little sister needs him, and the words cut through the noise like a blade. The bearded man pins Yukito in place with a blade inches from his face, making the threat unmistakably clear. Charlotte gasps, eyes wide with alarm, barely managing to breathe his name. Yukito stares downward, jaw tight, shadow falling across his face as the blade holds steady in front of him. The bearded man growls at Yukito to shut up and get out, calling him a stupid brat who clearly has a death wish that no one wants to be around. Steel pressed to his cheek, Yukito grits his teeth and admits silently that he was dangerously naive to think things would just fall into place. The bearded man walks off with Charlotte still in tow while Yukito stands alone with his back to everything, staring at the floor. Then a single word flickers through his mind: magic. Yukito steels himself and shouts that he is not sure it will work, but he has no choice, he has to try. Lang snaps to attention, something catching his eye. Charlotte's mouth drops open in shock, the dwarf grins wide, and the spell description for Mage Hand materializes in the air, a transparent force field capable of lifting and moving objects up to 2 pounds across a significant distance. A wooden mug lifts off on its own and floats through the air. Yukito watches the result with a completely neutral face. The floating mug smashes directly into the dwarf's face with a drenching splash, and someone's mouth blows open in a startled yell. The dwarf, soaked and furious, clutches his head and rounds on someone nearby for wasting his alcohol, while Yukito points right back at him and insists the mug moved on its own. Lang watches from above, taking in the unfolding chaos with quiet interest. Yukito and Charlotte slip away from the building in the distance, Yukito casting one last look back over his shoulder. Lang watches them go, a faint smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The two hurry down the street, catching their breath and agreeing that this distance should be safe. Yukito holds up the World Book and explains with wide eyes that he had accidentally turned to the guild's client registry when they first walked in, and that saved him. The open book shows an entry on the dwarf, a level 3 warrior, not yet a viable partner, and Yukito notes that the man's fierce attachment to alcohol was the key. He despises anyone who treats it carelessly. Yukito closes the book with quiet gratitude and turns to check on Charlotte. Lang watches them go, a faint smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Charlotte shakes with barely suppressed rage, tears pricking her eyes and fists clenched so tight her knuckles ache, vowing to make the man regret every insult. Steam practically rises off Charlotte as she declares they will grow stronger through quest after quest, spinning on her heel and telling Yukito to give it their all. A voice from just behind them interrupts politely, directed at the two of them. Lang introduces himself with a wide smile and a slight bow, a cleric by the name of Lang, and with one hand on his chest and a document in the other, he asks whether they would like to form a party. Charlotte's eyes light up as she spots the quest details, a kobold extermination request. Yukito studies Lang with measured skepticism and asks directly what his reason is for wanting to team up with them. Lang claps his hands together cheerfully and confirms that the business with the mug was indeed Yukito's magic and calls it an impressively quick-witted move. Lang gestures openly and explains the logic. A cleric, a knight, and a wizard make for solid balance, and he simply needs the manpower. Charlotte beams that she has no objection whatsoever, while Yukito stands beside her with a measured expression. Yukito's eyes narrow slightly as he reaches a quiet decision. Lang stands smiling with hands clasped, radiating patient warmth. Yukito exhales with quiet relief and lets himself acknowledge that Lang's alignment reads as lawful good. That alone puts his mind at ease. Lang's status entry confirms it, a level 3 cleric devoted to Ozmer, the god of justice and fairness. Yukito closes the World Book with a soft snap, telling himself that his worry was unnecessary. Not all adventurers are like the ones inside that hall. Yukito and Lang shake hands with matching smiles, and Yukito thanks him and says he hopes they will get along well. Yukito smiles quietly to himself, relieved with a cleric at their side. He can earn experience points far more safely than he could alone. Yukito shakes Lang's hand with his eyes closed and a broad, open smile, the first genuinely happy moment he has allowed himself since arriving in this world, relieved that there are still good people to be found. Lang returns the warmth with an equally wide smile and closed eyes, and with that, the story continues. Water drips steadily from the cave's stalactites, each drop sending quiet ripples across the pool below. A boot-clad foot in a striped sock splashes carelessly into a shallow puddle. The trio picks their way along a narrow, rocky cave path, with the female knight leading the way, torch in hand. Yukito notes with mild surprise that despite the cave's thick humidity, the temperature has not changed from outside. The bald man reminds both of his companions to watch their footing, earning a quiet acknowledgement. Yukito thanks Langsan warmly, crediting him entirely for making their official adventure registration possible. Yukito dips his head in a respectful bow toward a smiling Langsan. Langsan laughs it off with exaggerated modesty, waving away the gratitude with a grin. Yukito recalls how, after meeting Langsan, he returned to the guild and re-registered as an adventurer, a hooded figure now standing at the reception desk amid towering bookshelves. The moment Charlotte's status as a duke's daughter came to light, the guild staff's attitude shifted entirely, and Charlotte beams, hands clasped, utterly delighted by the reception. Fortunately, none of the usual regulars were around to crow about their accomplishments. With basic gear purchased, Yukito and his companion head toward an unregistered dungeon to begin their work. Yukito holds up his copper adventurer's plate, the mark of every beginner in this world, and it gleams faintly in the light. The plate pulses with a soft glow as it displays text in a foreign script, its information limited but functional. Yukito inwardly resigns himself to the grind. Rank only rises through accumulated achievements, and gathering better information is the only path to finding Sana. Yukito pushes deeper into the dark cave as bats scatter and shriek around him, the air alive with creaking and rustling. Pausing to look up at the bats wheeling overhead, Yukito consults his open book and calmly concludes that this cave is prime bat territory. Yukito holds up his copper adventurer's plate, the mark of every beginner in this world, and it gleams faintly in the light. Yukido flips through his book while Langsan stands close behind, learning that their mission today is to cull a recently overpopulated kobold infestation and wondering just what kind of monsters kobolds are. The book reveals its entry on kobolds, small, reptilian humanoids, weak and cowardly on their own but dangerous in numbers, bound in devotion to evil dragons they worship as gods. Someone asks what spell Yukido has prepared, and he confirms his main attack for the day is sleep. Langsan clasps his hands together, thoroughly reassured. Yukido, sweating quietly, wonders how reassured Langsan would feel knowing his caster is walking around with exactly 1 hit point. The group moves through the cave and Charlotte raises the question of traps, with Yukido confirming they should stay cautious. Yukido reasons inwardly that while neither of them can detect or disarm traps, kobolds are dim enough that careful movement should see them through. Yukido steels himself, remembering that he nearly died to goblins the moment he arrived in this world. Traps or not, death is never off the table. A sharp, heavy sound cuts through the cave's silence. Charlotte freezes, her eyes going wide. Charlotte thrusts her torch toward the shadows and cries out a warning. Something is lurking just beyond the light. 3 kobolds drop from the cave ceiling in a coordinated ambush. Charlotte raises her shield. Langsan braces his weapon, and Yukido stands caught in the middle, wide-eyed as his companions shout at him to cast his spell. Yukido raises his glowing hand and begins his incantation, offering the humanoid creatures a brief and peaceful slumber. A burst of white light erupts from his palm as he calls out the name of the spell. The sleep spell's mechanics are laid out in full. It rolls 5 8-sided dice and puts to sleep the creatures with the lowest hit points first, cascading through targets until the rolled value is exhausted. 2 kobolds crumple to the ground mid-charge, instantly unconscious. Yukido stands over one of the fallen kobolds with a quiet sense of satisfaction. Yukido barely registers the 3rd kobold before it launches itself straight at him from above. Langsan roars and brings down a massive, sweeping strike, Osmer's judgment, cutting the kobold down before it can land. Charlotte checks on Yukido from across the cave while Langsan kneels over the fallen kobold. Yukido, shaken but unhurt, confirms he is fine. Langsan grins through blood on his face, casually acknowledging that the fight had been closer than it looked. Yukido springs into action, staff raised, declaring it is time to finish off the remaining enemies. Yukido's hand tightens around his staff as someone urgently asks him to wait. Yukido stands firm in the foreground, Charlotte at his back, his expression completely resolute. Yukido's grip tightens on his cloak as a single thought hardens inside him. He needs to get stronger. Langsan glances down, his expression shifting into something uncertain. Yukido demands to be the one to finish the sleeping kobold himself, because he needs to claim the experience points from the kill with his own hands. Langsan blinks, mildly thrown off, then shrugs and gives his approval. Yukido thanks him and reflects inwardly that accumulating experience and raising one's level is simply how growth works in this world, and that he alone understands this through the world book. Yukido crouches over the unconscious kobold, knife in hand, and delivers the finishing blow while the creature snores on. Yukido demands to be the one to finish the sleeping kobold himself, because he needs to claim the experience points from the kill with his own hands. Yukido raises his knife over the sleeping kobold and mutters an unapologetic farewell. This creature is fuel for his survival. Yukido drives the blade down, his face tight with determination and effort. Yukido stands, face spattered with blood, and tells the group it is time to move on. Charlotte calls after him, pointing out the blood soaking into his clothes, but Yukido is already walking. Langsan watches them go in silence, his expression unreadable. Yukido raises his knife over the sleeping kobold and mutters an unapologetic farewell. This creature is fuel for his survival. Langsan's brow knots with a barely contained anger. The cave sits empty and quiet around them. The kobold extermination continues to go well. Langsan's offensive power and Charlotte's armored defense carry the group through wave after wave. Yukido wipes blood from his face and grins, thrilled to be just 5 experience points away from his next level up. Langsan stares downward, scowling. The group stands in a section of the cave strewn with goblin corpses, evidence that local residents and passing travelers had already been picking them off. Yukido takes in the scene with a quiet, unreadable expression. Charlotte drops to her knees and clasps her hands, offering a prayer for the souls of the fallen. Langsan bows his head and asks for Luria's guidance to be with the dead. Someone suggests turning back now that Yukido has spent his sleep spell, and the other agrees it is a sensible stopping point. Langsan's face drops into shadow, his eyes catching the light with an unsettling gleam as he stares at his companions. Without warning, Langsan swings his staff directly down at Charlotte, and she has no time to react. Charlotte is hurled to the ground with a cry. Yukido screams her name. Yukido, still reeling, demands to know what Langsan has just done. Lang San's face twists with cold contempt as he frames their deaths as a perfectly ordinary story, reckless rookies who overestimated themselves and perished in a kobold den. Yukido's mind races. The world book marked this man as good, so why is a cleric devoted to the god of justice turning on them now? Lang San's teeth grind together as he snarls that he will not allow a follower of an evil god to sully his god's name. Yukido stares back, completely blindsided, an evil god. Lang San jabs a finger at Yukido and reveals he has sensed the taint of the evil god Nephilia clinging to him since they first met at the bar, and he has been waiting for the right moment to send Yukido to hell ever since. A text entry explains the faith bonus granted to Ozmer's believers, the ability to sense followers of evil gods and those who carry divine protections, usable any number of times a day. Yukido's face goes white with shock. This man has been treating him as a believer of that woman the entire time. Lang San flips his staff in his grip, ready to strike. Yukido stares ahead in stunned silence, the weight of what is happening settling over him. Yukido's jaw locks and his expression hardens as the situation clicks into terrible clarity. Lang San grins with manic, bulging eyes and announces his divine mandate with total conviction. Wiping the evil god's influence from the world is the mission Ozmer himself assigned to him. Charlotte stirs on the ground with a pained groan. Lang San cackles and stomps a foot down onto Charlotte, remarking with perverse admiration that her duke's armor held up impressively under his blow. Yukido shouts at Lang San to stop, insisting that Charlotte has done absolutely nothing wrong. Lang San counters that accompanying a follower of an evil god makes Charlotte equally guilty in his eyes. Lang San hefts his blade with a satisfied smile, declaring that taking it from them will let him do far more good in the world. Yukido smiles back at him with cold contempt, pointing out that attacking people and stealing their belongings is unambiguously evil where he comes from, and that Lang San is the lowest kind of person imaginable. Lang San's expression goes completely blank, staring ahead with hollow, unblinking eyes. Yukido feels a chill crawl over him the moment those eyes land on him. Lang San's eye fills the space as he roars his conviction, killing evil believers, taking their weapons, using everything for good. He sees no contradiction, and he will not allow someone like Yukido to go on breathing and polluting his god's world. Yukido registers the look in Lang San's eyes with a sinking certainty. This is not fanaticism he can reason with. Charlotte clings to Yukido's leg in the darkness as Lang San raises his weapon and orders them not to move. Lang San brings his staff crashing down, and Yukido throws himself out of the way just in time. Lang San fixes Yukido with bloodshot, unblinking eyes and promises he will not allow him even a single moment to breathe. Lang San looms in the foreground, while Yukido tries to put distance between them with Charlotte still on the ground behind him. Yukido screams that he is not a Nephilia believer and tries to explain the truth, that the ill-natured woman in question is actually this world's. Lang San's face contorts with fury. Lang San cuts Yukido off mid-sentence with a horizontal swing of his staff, driving him back by sheer force. Yukido tells himself to think. There has to be a way to hit back, and tears open the world book in desperation. The book's pages blur as Yukido flips through them at speed. Something in the pages stops Yukido cold. Lang San lunges forward screaming for Yukido to die. Yukido breaks into a dash, a page or card clutched tight in his hand. Yukido thrusts his palm forward, and a magic circle blazes to life in the air. A bolt of raw magical energy tears toward Lang San with a thunderous crack. Lang San throws his arms up in a desperate attempt to shield himself as the blast closes in. Amid a thunderous explosion of rocks and debris, a caped figure stands his ground as the chaos erupts around him. He drops low and scrambles through the rubble, moving fast and staying alive. Sweat streaking his face, he clutches a large book with both hands and steels himself for what comes next. Strained and wide-eyed, he holds the book open as raw magical energy jolts through him. Chapter 7 of the dungeon is far from over. A voice cuts through the tension. Someone had been hiding a spell beyond mere sleep magic, and their opponent has figured it out. Armored boots stride forward with deliberate menace as their owner calls the hidden caster a dirty brat. A hand claws into the rocky surface for support as the owner notes, with grim satisfaction, that they managed to dodge the magic bolt aimed their way. A grinning bald man in armor towers over the caped figure sprawled on the ground, mocking him with the question of whether he truly calls himself a wizard. That wide grin never fading, the bald man brings his weapon down in a savage arc, declaring that this is the end. An eye snaps wide with shock as something fast, impossibly fast, cuts through the air. The caped figure shouts for Charlotte to act now, and the bald man's confidence cracks into stunned disbelief. A jaw tightens with sweat-soaked tension as someone braces for the moment to strike. Dagger in hand and cape billowing, the caped figure lunges forward at blinding speed while the bald man barely has time to register what is happening. The bald man's eyes go wide with alarm. That speed is something no ordinary wizard should possess. Razor-focused, the caped figure's gaze locks onto the gap in his opponent's armor. The decision is made. That gap is the target. The dagger drives home into the chink in the bald man's armor, wrenching a howl of pain from him as the strike lands, a textbook sneak attack. The bald man screams in pure agony, blood spraying from the wound. Standing over his fallen opponent, the caped figure watches as the bald man crumples to the ground, coughing. On hands and knees, the bald man looks up through pain and sweat, demanding to know why a so-called magician moves like that. Gasping and drenched in sweat, the caped figure reflects that the technique belongs to a thief and quietly wonders which he truly is, a witch or a thief. The bald man seethes through gritted teeth at the revelation, his fury barely contained. A bat flutters through the scene as the truth is revealed. The magic bolt was never aimed at Lang, but at the creature hovering behind him. It was calculated from the start, 15 experience points from the bat, and with 9 points needed to level up, killing it at just the right moment meant gaining crucial power in the middle of the fight. Standing tall with dagger in hand, the caped figure owns the outcome. A wizard rogue multiclass was always the smartest way to survive a situation like this. The rogue class skill oversight is revealed, an ability that lets its user pinpoint an opponent's exact vulnerabilities before striking. The earlier sneak attack is given its true weight. Sneak attack, the rogue's signature move, deals crushing bonus damage by targeting an enemy's vital point. Defeated, the bald man spits his frustration through clenched teeth, cursing his opponent as a follower of the evil god. An arm lies still against the ground, spent. Looking up at the man standing over him, the bald man concedes the loss is his. Bloodied and sitting in the dirt, the bald man smirks and lays out the reality. He has nothing left in the tank, and his opponent must have exhausted his own tricks by now. The caped figure holds his dagger and says nothing, expression guarded. With a young woman lying unconscious nearby, the bald man presses his advantage, suggesting a draw and urging his opponent to get her to safety before it is too late. The bald man keeps talking as the caped figure moves toward the cave entrance, suggesting that men who serve different gods can still walk away from mutual destruction. The caped figure turns and walks away, leaving the bald man sitting alone on the ground. Sweating with a wide, manic grin, the bald man dismisses his opponent as a genuine fool. He hauls himself back to his feet, energy returning to his battered frame. His plan is already forming. As a monk, he can use speed recovery to heal himself and then finish them both off. Something stops him cold. His eyes go wide and his composure shatters. A hand dangles the bald man's circular seal necklace in the air with a faint clink, and he stares, unable to understand when he lost it. The dark-haired figure stands calmly, the stolen seal held in his hand. He raises the seal and spells it out. Without this, the bald man cannot recite a single faith spell. The bald man stares ahead, sweat rolling down his face as the implication sinks in. The rogue skillsuri can lift small items from a target without them ever noticing. Teeth clench and sweat drips as someone struggles to process the humiliation. Rage overtakes the bald man completely, screaming that he will kill him. He reaches for his mace. The dark-haired figure watches with calm, calculating eyes. Dark-gloved hands seize the bald man's face from both sides, squashing it with brutal force. The dark-haired figure takes him down hard, crashing them both to the ground with explosive impact. Pinning the bald man flat on his back with a hand around his throat, the dark-haired figure makes clear he is not the forgiving type as his opponent chokes beneath him. Face twisted with fury, the dark-haired figure begins to recite clean water, blue determination. A torrent of magically conjured, purified water crashes down directly onto the bald man's face as he writhes and gurgles beneath the relentless flood. The create water spell does exactly what it promises, and then some. A torrent of magically conjured, purified water crashes down directly onto the bald man's face as he writhes and gurgles beneath the relentless flood. The create water spell does exactly what it promises, and then some. A European-style building sits quietly outside, its hanging sign swaying in the calm. Inside a modest room, the dark-haired young man sits in a chair while a blonde woman rests on the bed, mug in hand. Warm and smiling, the blonde woman thanks Yukido for saving her life with the healing potion. Yukido smiles back and tells her the enemy has been handed off to a palace guard. She is safe, and that is all that matters. Yukido sold Lang's equipment at a weapon shop to fund whatever comes next, and quietly admits he also lifted Lang's healing potion along the way. Alone with his thoughts, Yukido hunches over and concedes to himself that he was far too naive. The memory hits hard, both of them bloodied and barely standing, a reminder of how close to death they truly came. Two hands grip each other tightly as Yukido accepts the lesson. He abandoned rational thought and trusted the world book without question, and that nearly cost them everything. Resolve carved into every line of his face, Yukido declares that surviving this world demands more than caution, and that he must also save Sana. murmurs rise from somewhere dark and rocky below. Deep within a cave, robed figures bow and raise their arms before a massive altar where several women lie motionless beneath a horned skull symbol. Someone announces that the moon has risen. The cult members prostrate themselves in reverence, declaring the arrival of the goddess of destiny. As the faithful bow low, dark shapes begin rising from the earth, exactly as the oracle foretold. A massive dragon with glowing eyes and half-spread wings looms over the unconscious women, issuing a single command: capture those who have taken the world book. Meanwhile, Yukito and the blonde woman share a lighter moment over mugs, smiling at each other, unaware of what hunts them as the chapter closes.